Tequila.
Rayan dos Santos vs Alisar Dalin. This could be a slow burner, possibly a staring contest at times. Rayan dos Santos returns after a broken arm and brings more experience and grappling upside. Dalin is awkwardly effective but too inactive at times and lacks defensive awareness. If Dos Santos sets the pace and mixes in takedowns, she should cruise to a win. Unless Dalin surprises with volume and pressure, I see Dos Santos controlling this. Final prediction: Rayan dos Santos via decision. This is a classic pressure versus patience matchup. Blacfield was dominating Duncan until he got reckless and paid for it. If he keeps the same intensity but mixes in some wrestling, Medeiros may crumble under pressure. Medeiros is sharp and technical, but too passive when pressured. He also drops his hands and leaves openings. Oki needs to capitalize early, keep Medeiros on the back foot, and vary his attack. Final prediction: Blacfield via decision or TKO. Kurt Holobaugh vs Jordan Levitt. A low-key technical battle between two grappler strikers. Holobaugh is more aggressive, but that may play into Levitt's hands. Levitt will likely use strikes to set up takedowns and control from top. Holobaugh is tough, but his one-speed forward style will give Levitt openings to counter or shoot. Unless Holobaugh lands something significant early, I see Levitt grinding out a win with smarter grappling. Final prediction: Jordan Levitt via decision or submission. Trevin Giles vs Andreas Gustafsson. Trevin Giles remains one of the most frustrating fighters on the roster, loaded with talent but often coasting. Against a relentless mauler like Andreas Gustafsson, that won't cut it. Gustafsson brings early pressure, clinch-heavy offense, and big power. I see him overwhelming Giles, who's too passive when backed up. Unless Giles wakes up and fights smart, he's getting smothered or finished. Final prediction: Andreas Gustafsson via decision or TKO. Ketlin Vieira vs Macy Chiasson. This is a crossroads fight for both women. Ketlin Vieira is aggressive, but one-dimensional and fades without a brawl. Macy Chiasson is more cerebral and rangy, and she'll use that to frustrate Vieira. If Chiasson controls range and forces Vieira to grapple from desperation, it's her fight to lose. Vieira will have to land something big to change the tide, but I don't see her cutting off the cage or dealing with Chiasson's movement. Final prediction: Macy Chiasson via decision or TKO. Joffel Filho vs Alan Nascimento. This is a grappler's delight, on paper. Both men are submission specialists, but with long layoffs such as Filho being out for 1.5 years, and Nascimento being out for 2.5 years, we may see more striking than expected. If it stays standing, the advantage goes to Filho, who has heavier hands and has been more active. Nascimento's kicks could be a factor, especially if he targets Filho's legs early. But unless he uses them to set up takedowns and dominate control time, I lean towards Filho here. Final prediction: Joffel Filho via decision, submission, or TKO. Zachary Reese vs Duško Todorovic. Expect fireworks here, for as long as it lasts. Zachary Reese hits harder, has less wear and tear, and brings a significant reach advantage. Duško Todorovic's durability could buy him time, but I don't see him surviving the early storm like Medina did in Reese's last fight. Todorovic may look to wrestle if the pressure gets too intense, but he usually does this reactively and too late. Reese should be able to stuff early shots or work back to his feet if taken down. This fight screams violence and an early finish. Final prediction: Zachary Reese via TKO, round 1 or 2, or decision. Strong lean on under 2.5 rounds. Dustin Jacoby vs Bruno Lopez. This one's a chess match with bombs. Dustin Jacoby is like a more experienced version of Getsy Asilov, someone Lopez recently beat by neutralizing his range and exploiting his grappling holes. Jacoby is dangerous at distance, has solid power, and far more high-level experience, but he has shown vulnerability on the ground. Lopez can match Jacoby's power and is more willing to mix in takedowns and control the pace. If he can drag Jacoby into the clinch or get him down, that could swing rounds in his favor. Still, if Lopez gets too comfortable on the front foot, he risks walking into a laser-accurate counter from Jacoby. I expect both fighters to test each other everywhere. This one could be a sleeper banger, or a methodical, tactical battle. Final prediction: Bruno Lopez via decision or TKO. Billy Ray Goff vs Ramiz Brahimaj. It's evident why the UFC elevated this matchup on the card. It injects much-needed excitement. True UFC enthusiasts recognize that even the most lackluster cards often feature a few standout bouts, and this is one of them. Both fighters are aggressive finishers, willing to take risks to secure a stoppage. However, I believe Brahimaj is the more strategic of the two. Goff approaches fights with a mindset that he can't be hurt, relying heavily on his pressure and power. This overconfidence sometimes leads him to neglect proper setup and technique. In contrast, Brahimaj has evolved over time. Initially, he fought recklessly, relying solely on his grappling to overwhelm opponents. After experiencing some setbacks, including a unanimous decision loss to Themba Gorimbo, Brahimaj has refined his approach, blending striking with his grappling skills. Goff, still early in his development, hasn't faced the same challenges that would prompt such growth. Without this evolution, he risks a series of losses that could jeopardize his UFC career. A defeat here might be the catalyst he needs to reassess and adapt his fighting style. Final prediction: Ramiz Brahimaj via TKO or submission. Should Goff's resilience allow him to withstand Brahimaj's offense, a decision victory for Brahimaj is also plausible. However, based on their current trajectories and skill sets, Brahimaj is the favored pick. The only scenario where Goff triumphs is if he manages to land a decisive strike under pressure, leading to a TKO or decision in his favor. Nonetheless, I lean towards Brahimaj securing the win in this matchup. Gamrot vs Ludovic Klein. Was I the only one who thought Mateusz Gamrot got robbed against Dan Hooker? He clearly edged rounds 1 and 3, but here he is, set for a tough rebound against the surging Ludovic Klein. Stylistically, this isn't an easy matchup. Klein is a slick, front-foot striker with serious speed, power, and variety in his offense. Gamrot, on the other hand, has a frustrating habit of getting clipped while recklessly entering exchanges, but his elite wrestling consistently bails him out. Klein can absolutely catch him and finish the fight, but Gamrot's pace, grappling, and ability to grind opponents down gives him a huge edge if he initiates the clinch and chain wrestling early. Klein tends to struggle when forced backward, and cardio has been a recurring issue in his game, a fatal flaw against someone like Gamrot. If Gamrot sets a relentless pace, Klein will likely fade, especially if taken down and forced to work off his back. And if Klein fades hard, we've seen a more aggressive, finish-hunting Gamrot emerge in recent bouts. Final prediction: Gamrot via decision or TKO. Main event time with Erin Blanchfield taking on Macy Barber. Had Macy Barber not dodged this fight years ago, we'd already have our answer. But here we are. A few years have passed, and both women have evolved, yet the edge still leans toward Erin Blanchfield. She's faced stiffer competition and is fresh off 2 grueling 5-round wars that went the distance. Meanwhile, Barber has looked improved but hasn't shown the same ability to thrive under that kind of pace, and she's had cardio issues even in 3-rounders. Barber does carry solid power and is physically imposing for the division. She could potentially capitalize on Blanchfield's porous striking defense, but even if she lands, Blanchfield has a durable chin and will likely weather the storm. I also expect Barber to shoot for takedowns, especially if her success on the feet is limited, but Blanchfield's wrestling and scramble ability are levels above. She'll either stuff the shots or reverse and put Barber on her back. In a high-paced draining affair like this, Barber's tendency to fade will be costly. She'll need to conserve energy and pick her spots, which just isn't her usual approach. Unless she hurts Blanchfield early or catches her in a scramble, I don't see her dictating this fight. I expect Blanchfield to wear her down with relentless pressure and cage control. Final prediction: Erin Blanchfield via decision or submission.